All right, so there's a quick explanation of what we're doing here. Essentially, the plan is this. I will do my best to help people review their characters when they're following one of my build guides and tackle any questions or issues that that person may have. This guy is Johnny Boy Dude 123, following my Cold Holy Relic Guardian build. And you said that one of your issues is that you can't stop dying past tier 16s. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go through the character and see if there's any issues with it, compare it to the guide, and go through what the next step is to upgrade your character as well as solve whatever issues you may have. And if we're going to look at upgrades, I'm going to look at how much currency the person that I'm helping has and use that currency as a limitation on helping this person out. So, Johnny, you said dying past tier 16. When you say past tier 16, are we talking about juiced tier 16s? Or are we talking about like actually being inside tier 17s? So first what I'll do is I'll bring out one the actual guide itself. So this is in the low, moving into medium. Okay. So this is 3 points invested to get plus 30 dexterity. It's not really recommended to do something like that. Like, essentially what this is 3 points out of each investment here is worth 10 dexterity. This would be the same thing as doing this. Just having 3 passive points is what this is doing. You also have the dexterity down here. So my first recommendation would be that you can save yourself 4 different skill points just alone from gathering dexterity on your gear for obvious reasons. Those 4 points can be invested into the barbarism, which is max fire rest, but most importantly, you get a little bit of rest, but life, which should be in the guide as well. Let me double check. Yes, it is. Let's see what else we have. Your problem is dying, so these 2 extra damage nodes could be skipped in favor of more defensive nodes, for example. You have the beginning of a cluster jewel in this position here. What is the purpose of this cluster jewel? Because if you're going for the medium budget of this build, the cluster jewel is supposed to be a 12 passive effect jewel. So this cluster to me doesn't make much sense. You get 3 damage nodes, and then you're going into Feasting Fiends Renewal. Currency is an issue for me. Okay, but so here's the first steps for this. Looking at the tree, you have an incorrect tree compared to what's portrayed in the actual build guide, right? The first initial steps is you have these 4 points wasted here. The cluster jewel makes very little sense for the build. And if the argument is that you get damage nodes, but your problem is dying, I don't think you have problems with damage at this point. I'll check the skills in a second. And this one's placed and you don't have any nodes here. All of these nodes should be spent in positions where what the guide is showing, right? So you have a jewel slot over here, which gives you a little strength as well. You have life nodes from barbarism that's not picked up. Let's see what else we're missing. Resistance, yes, check. Offering, check. AoE, check. That's checked. You didn't take the endurance charge. Endurance charges are very, very strong for defenses. So you're level 90. What I would do is this. I would cut that node out. I would cut these nodes out. I will pick up the jewel socket up here. I'll take the endurance charge here. I'd go for the life nodes as expected. I would cut the entirety of the cluster out. 91, right? What else do we get? We get extra jewel socket here. Let's see what else we can do. Those are just the 3 changes that we're doing. We did pick... Oh, we don't have the life notes here either. Now we're level 90. That's where I would start. You even have a spare point left over, so if your gear is a problem with dexterity, now I can take this extra 30 dex here and still be level 91 and just keep that one, but cut these out, right? So what the changes we've done here allows you to have 2 different jewel sockets open. How much currency do you have right now, Johnny? Let's find out how much currency he has. I'm gonna look at the skills as well, but this is just the 3 changes. Literally max 50C. That's more than enough to do a lot of things with this character. Like a lot. Let me check the skills first. So what's up with the
Ghazzy.
what's up with the that's the wrong one, sorry. Let me just bring up the other character. Thanks so much, Real Goop, over the 10 months, man. I appreciate that, dude. This POB here is the low body POB from the guide. Right? Damage is incorrect. And in here, if you look at auras, we're not running determination. So skill-wise, you have incorrect setup for auras. Well, determination is not even used. We're using flesh and stone. So this should not be determination. There's Tempest Shield. I was like, yo, where's Tempest Shield? That's important. So determination is not used. But you could if you want to, but it's just not needed. And it's not what the guide is showing either. So these are simple things that a lot of people seem to be doing, is that you're missing out some fundamental pieces. Like, for example, the cluster made no sense in the budget that you're at, right? Instead, we cut that out and we added that extra endurance charge, we added extra HP, and we went in from there. And got to keep in mind that the way we're generating endurance charges, which is also covered in the guide, of course, is to have deflection, because the higher biodiversity keeps enduring composure clusters and whatnot. But you need to have a way to generate those endurance charges that gives you tons of defense, especially if you're Alcon go to your 16s. And that is done through oiling deflection on your amulet. But you don't have an oil on your amulet. And if you look at deflection, it's down here somewhere. This is an amber, indigo, silver oil. And so for reference of what that would cost you, I think the silver oil is pretty expensive. So if this is too much, you said your budget was 50C, then we're going to chill on this. We don't run this then. We don't run this because of your current budget situation. But that would be something that I would recommend looking into. The changes I made to your character so far was adding 2 jewel slots. Those are going to cost currency to fill, right? Unless you have them in your stash. So we're going to look into those things first. And then I would say get the deflection. But I don't think you should do an oil on this specific amulet. The amulet that we're running in the other character has to do with sorting your dexterity. So if you look at your amulet right now, you have fire rest, you have chaos rest, and and a bit of life, right? Tier 16 without can go. Yeah, there's plenty of strategies you can do to make currency, but we're not talking about strategies here. We're talking about how to fix this character, right? So I'm gonna go to the market, and we're gonna find an amulet with dexterity, and I would search it like this, and I would say, well, look for something with at least 40, let's say 45 dexterity, and high life, say, yeah, it says it's 60 life, right? And in your resistance situation, you have a little bit of bench rest, you have a bunch of chaos rest. You can actually look for total chaos rest, say 25. Now we can look at the prices of these first. Okay, so about 5 chaos is what you can spend. And you will get tons of rest, tons of chaos rest, a high amount of dexterity, and a good life roll. But this is not a bad amulet for 5 chaos. Here's another one with 26. This one has less resistances. So I would then add another modifier searching for LE rest and say, well, I want at least 40% resistances. And now you can see how they go up quite a lot in price. But this one's really good. So I would say buy this one. Let me send this to you, Johnny. I would buy this for 5C. And that would solve a lot of your issues with the resistances for Chaos Rest to get up. But you get tons of dexterity compared to your current state of your amulet gives no dexterity except for the implicit. So this is an effective way for many minion builds to solve attributes through these things. If you look at your bone ring here, for example, you have 0 life modifiers on it. This ring gives you attack and cast speed. Now, you're playing a Holy Relic build. Holy Relic build do not benefit from attack cast speed from your bone rings. Instead, what you want to do is get minion damage and or minion resistance. So in our case, you do need a little bit of minion resistance, which is also covered in the guide, because we're not actually giving our minions resistances through our ascendancies, which the Necromancer would very easily do. We don't have rest from any other sources except for the implicit. So if you look at the stats of Summon Holy Relic, they're only on 55% elemental rest. So I'm not sure, you didn't say it, but it feels like you'd be in positions where some content would actually kill your minions. Is that correct? Because I would expect your minions to die every now and then with this. Yes. And the main reason behind this is their resistances. So what you want to do with the bone ring, to give you an idea of how to search for those things. By the way, you can just lower this rest, let's say 30, and if you can't buy the 5C one, you can also do higher on that and lower the chaos rest to 20, and just play around with that to get these budgets or the cost of these down. You don't need to focus too much on chaos rest. The most important part is to get yourself as much attributes and life as possible, right? So here now we have more options on the amulets. Let me just send this one to you as well. This will give you more options, but the important part here is to solve the dexterity, so you don't do this idea with pushing over to 4 points to spec in, or 3 points, sorry, for dexterity. And if you get more, you can skip this as well, right? The bone ring would be looking like this. So in our case, their resistance cap, you spec in with this point to give them +8 max. They have a 75% cap of res. And if you go to calculations, go to the Summon Holy Relic, which is your main minion, and then click them show minion stats, you'll see the resistances up here. Their cap is 75. We're giving them +8, that's 83%. We're not even close to that, but we want to get them there. You can do the same thing when it comes to other minions. For example, we don't really care that much about the golem, but if we go to Spectre. Where's your Spectres? Wait, am I blind? There they are. I am blind. Apologize. I'm literally targeting it. There we go. Okay. Which Spectres are you running? Like a Carnage Chieftain? Or a Host Chieftain? Your fancy ones. Fairly new to these. That's okay. So the guide is telling you to use a Primal Crush Claw. So what you would do is you would go to in-game chat. You would then type in lowercase letters /global 6666. Then it'll get you into the global channel, my community channel, in which we're sharing Spectres, and you would literally search for looking for Primal Crush Claw. Let me type it in the Twitch chat for you. Primal Crush Claw. That, and you would want Pale Seraphim as well, but you can keep one of your charged Spectres. That's actually fine. Wouldn't recommend it, but the most important one is Primal Crush Claw. What that one does is, first off, it's a beefy motherfucker. And then it will apply a debuff on enemies, making them take increased cold damage. It is a massive damage burst increase for this kind of character. This is also covered in the guide. Let's see. Right, so once you've covered these things, let me go to the trade. Here we go. We're talking about the bone ring. So knowing that they get 75%, sorry, 75. Here. They have 55% resistances with the bone ring implicit. And you had 15%, I think. Yes, you do. Good job. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get them another 20% to reach the normal cap, 28% to get to the next cap. So you have two choices. You either get all of it on one item, either your shield or one of your bone rings. And in our case, we're supposed to use an unset ring, but we don't have to. You could save one of your sockets. That's okay to do, but I wouldn't recommend it. Your idea is to solve HP and survivability with 50C buddies. I'll try to stay within that parameter. So what we do with the bone ring is I think you can keep your shield, but I don't understand the energy shield craft when you need life. So I would say change the bench craft in your shield to a life craft, and then you don't necessarily have to upgrade your shield. Just put a life craft on it instead, and you'll have a lot better defense from that alone. But the ring you would go for would look something like this. You search for a bone ring. You want to have a count group because you can bench this. You either go for, like, say, 60 life or an empty prefix slot. And then you would want, what do you have in your ring right now? You want to have minion resistance. Preferably get all 28 there. That would be the best case scenario. You don't have any life right now. You only have resistances. So what you do, you look like this. Again, another 5 chaos purchase. These can be bench crafted with life. Now, obviously, do keep in mind that you have quite a lot of resistance here. You have 46 fire and then a benched lightning rest. So all of these changes, you need to make sure you balance your resistances with these purchases. But as you can see, you don't need to spend more than between 5 and 10 chaos to cap all of your minions' resistances. This one is actually fantastic. Here, let me link you this one. This ring gives you 14 all resistance and fire res. And do keep in mind, we've been doing this on stream a lot here. You can use 500 harvest juice to change a specific elemental res to another specific elemental res. So should you be in need the fire res and this resistance happen to be cold, you could change that with harvest. Right? So that's one way of doing it. It's a reason he got that ring. So essentially what this would do is this allows you to cap your resistances completely. You don't have to change your shield for this. Change the bench craft on your shield to life, and now you'll cap your minion resist. You'll get a ton more life because you can now bench craft up to 55 life, I think it is. And then we look at your next ring. You have an amethyst ring. Now, if you're fine with a socket situation, then this ring would be fine to keep. You can run with a life. It's a good life mod here. Darkness and Throne, mediocre roll. That's perfectly fine. In here, you have 3 different ghastly eye jewels, neither of which has a life modifier. Now, in the gear section on the guide, I'm emphasizing on so many places in that guide that tells you that you need to prioritize a high life roll on every single piece that should have a life roll. That includes the jewels. And there's a stat priority list in which the number 1 stat is life. So normally the way you want to scale or gear characters in PoE is to have your main source of defensive stat, which in most low body builds is life. Then any required attributes to be able to wear the gear and skill gems that you have. And then the third priority is any sort of resistances that you have not capped, excluding chaos res. Then you have other priorities to get the gear up and damage and whatnot. And then if there's open possibilities for you to get chaos res on top of that, then you do that as well. That's usually how low budget priorities in gearing goes. In your case, all 3 of these jewels needs to go simply because of the fact, like, this is a lot of damage, tons of damage, but your issue is not damage. Your issue is surviving. That puts the build at this point at 1, 2, 6 different jewel slots. So I'm going to show you a simple search for the jewel slots, right? I would search for a life mod, and I normally want to have 30 or higher life. You can go down to 25. Well, let's say 30, because I think that's going to be very, very, very cheap. Then you search for a ghastly eye jewel, and then you can add, if you need more dexterity, you can actually do this very easily. But first and foremost, I would use a count group. In our case, we can do minion deal physical damage because we're converting. I'd say 20 or higher should be cheap. Minion deal cold damage. Let's say 20 or higher there as well. So I would do calculate a search like this would allow me to find ghastly eye jewels with a life mod with one of these modifiers. Now, if you need something else, you can just add that to the list here. Let's say, oh shit, I need more dexterity. A little behind on that. Let's add dexterity, because I can smack 1 dexterity jewel in the belt, and that would be scaled by this effect, right? These are 5C jewels. Again, if they're too expensive, what I would do is I would then lower the life mod or lower the damage mods, because the important part here is get yourself life sorted, right? So here's a search for dexterity, for example. 9 dexterity, You get 75% scaling. You're good. In this case, you will get quite a lot of your dexterity covered. You can get 2 of these jewels if you want to. And if the cost is too high, just lower these to, say, 15. You can lower this to, say, 25. And you'll see how these jewels are now going to be ridiculously cheap. We're talking about 5 chaos purchases here. So this should be well within your budget to do, right? Another way you can do is if we don't need dexterity, you can disable that from the search. And is there anything else we need? Maybe you need some resistances. I think chaos rest is the one that's going to be expensive. Yeah, now we're talking 10, 20, 30 chaos. So try to stay away from chaos resistance to keep the budget down. If there's any elemental rests, they seem to be about the same price. So if you do need more resistances, you could get the elemental rest with these mods and you'll be fine as well. So let me send you this search as well. Because you're looking at buying 6 of these. So if we take the ring, the amulet, and 6 of these, so that's 30, that's about 40 chaos. I would even say that you might be touching on 50 chaos already. So I don't want to tell you to buy more than this. So I'd say that's a good start for where you're at right now. And that will give you a ton of life. So I'm going to add these to the build. And just to give you an idea of where you'd be in terms of HP just from these changes. That would go away and we would get a life craft in here. I'm going to keep it mediocre rolled. Where did that ring go? There it is. Well, you can buy this one, 5C. This one's sick, actually. But let's get the one that we talked about earlier. Unless it looks like you already bought it. Let's add this. Add modifier, life. We change that to this ring. And suddenly you have a lot more HP. What else do we have? The amulet was going to change. Get the amulet. Nice, nice, nice. Okay, so you already got the amulet. I'm just going to take one of these. Is there a life? Yes, there is. Amulet. Get this. There's just those changes puts you up on 5,000 HP. So this is the way I would start. I would basically solve this attribute situation. Make sure that you actually have and following the requirements, the attribute requirements. Sorry, not attribute. The modifier scaling priority that the guide is showing, right? Your next step that you would want to do with this is to get a trigger craft on your weapon. So from where you're at right now, you have a weapon with strength, dexterity, attack speed, and damage. So if you want to make the build a little smoother, I would look into solving not needing the dex from the weapon and crafting it with the Essence of Fear, which you already have, and making sure there's an open suffix. But I wouldn't care too much about this unless you feel like it's clunky to play, because you want to have a trigger craft. The trigger craft looks like this. It is this one. So this allows you to have a trigger craft that triggers these spells in your gems. Triggers spell gems, sorry, in your weapon. And in which you would then put Desecrate, Spirit Offering, and Life Tap, right? So you would have this set up. Do keep in mind that the way this works, you want to make sure that Desecrate is on the very first socket. Now, some items, they look like this, and some items looks like this when it's 3-linked, right? Socket number 1 is the one I'm going to put as blue here. That is socket number 1 in a 3-link that looks like this. This is socket number 1 in a 3-link that looks like this. Make sure that Desecrate happens in a socket that happens before your offering. So in my wand, I have Desecrate on the very first socket. Then I have Bone Offering. Or in your case, it's Spirit Offering. Right? So do keep that in mind. And the Life Tap, you can have Life Tap at the very high. First slot. I can have Life Tap up here. As long as Desecrate happens before Desecrate happens before Offering. That's all you really need to think about when it comes to this. and a lot of people miss it. It's a very small thing. It doesn't really matter, but it's a little smoother. So just a small tip there. It's a little smoother. It's not super important, but then what I would do in your next step, I would not spend more currency on this character from here, where you're at right now, Johnny. I would take the step that you're in, and I would do the upgrades I did. Make sure that you're clearing tier 16 smoothly. You get your voids, the actual void stones for your progression, because you can do that with this approach. And my next step would be solving the weapon. And then what I would do is I would start nibbling on the idea of progressing from where you're at into medium budget. So now you're in a position where you need to start making currency. That means engaging with the league mechanic, find a strategy you like running with the maps, but make sure you can do your void stones and clear tier 16s, and the things that we just talked about should cover you for that end. Your boots are fine. It's high movement speed. The rest is kind of low, but there's life and movement speed. I have no problems with these. Your body armor. The biggest problem with your body armor, in my opinion, is the lack of HP. What you can do is to avoid spending currency is to skip having a life mod and make sure there are no life tagged modifiers, which I see here that you don't, because it's suppress spell, evasion, energy shield, cold rest, stun, block recovery, and a benchcraft. So when I say life tagged modifiers, if you look at Doriani's prototype, the second mod on the explicit, it says unique modifiers, and then it says increased armor, energy shield, and then the second mod says life, right? But if you look at the gray text above the life, it says unique modifier, then a dash, life. The text after the dash tells you what tag it has. That's a life tag. Your body armor does not have a life tag. This allows you to actually save a skill point if you don't need this dexterity node that we talked about, by sorting that through other measures or whatever. You can skip one of your life mods even, probably this one. What you can then do is look at a life mastery and pick up this modifier right there, which you actually already have. So I'm just gonna chill. You already have it, but that's how you can do it. Just keep that in mind. So once you're done with the purchases we talked about, look into the weapon and then start nibbling at the idea of moving into medium budget. The things you're missing is changing your Spectre. You're missing endurance charges. So you don't need to spec into this node until you're in a position where you actually generate endurance charges. And that's going to cost you silver oil. Pretty expensive. It's pretty expensive. So there's two solutions to this. You either get yourself a better amulet that is worth putting that on. Like, for example, in the medium budget version of this, I would say that you want to go for something like the replica Dragon Fang. And they're like 2 divines. This would be a good step in the next direction, but this is a lot more currency than the budget you presented me with. But this would be a good, big next step into investment. Don't buy a corrupted one. And then oil this so you get that that deflection for the endurance charge generation. That would be something that I would look into. And the other solution you have is actually an enduring composure. But I don't think you should do this. Enduring composure, non-unique, please. Like a 2 passive one. Like, you could do something like this. It's 20C, but it's like, I think it's level 65 or something. So if you did that, you just alteration craft yourself. I don't think you should go down that road. I think deflection would just be a better call. But that's basically where I would start in your case. So a little quick TLDR on what we've done here is that we changed the benchcraft from his shield, from an energy shield to actual life, because he doesn't benefit much from energy shield at all. We changed his amulet into something that gives a lot more dexterity, because that was a huge issue he was having. There was not enough dexterity. We made sure that the bone ring has proper resistances to cap his minions, so his minions should be stopped. They should not be dying as much now, if at all, in just Alkengo 16s. We changed every single jewel that he has in the build for anything that actually gives life. Svalin it basically cost all of his budgets. We're not gonna use Svalin. Svalin is really good in general. He'd lose some damage, but he would get tons of defense from Svalin, but it's a bit different. And then what else? Once we covered that, we looked at the tree. We cut these points here for dexterity because now we're solving that through our gear. We cut the entire cluster here because it was just not needed. And what we did is we followed the guide and added the life modifiers, which included barbarism for max resistances, elemental rest, and HP. We grabbed these nodes for more life as well. And we added this dual socket, and we added this dual socket, and we added this dual socket as a result of that. Now, if you don't need the endurance charge here, Johnny, you can always spec into the extra life here as well. And that would be a good start to progress with from your current states. Do you have any follow-up questions? That's good. Thanks a lot. Awesome. Anyway, so we're gonna post this on YouTube as well because a lot of people are falling into some of these simple mistakes of like not having life on the rare gear. It's very important. So we're going to post this on YouTube. So for those of you watching this on YouTube, I hope me helping Johnny here is coming to use for you guys as well. Keep in mind, the guide is covering priority list of modifiers. Life is super important. If it's a low budget build that goes life, every rare item that you have should basically have a life modifier. And I'm not talking about, oh, it's okay with a 20 life. No. Look at this item here. This ring right there. It's 100 life. This is a really good low budget initial baseline step. It gives basically nothing else for this character. But since he's already covered in rest in the PoE he sent me with this, that ring is actually really good. It's an implicit of chaos rest. He has bench arrest and it's 100 HP. This is so good for super low budget league starter approaching builds. Get life. And then you have situations like the Amulet, these jewels. Cast speed, irrelevant. Flat fist, that's nice. Hinder, doesn't really matter too much, but it's kind of nice. But there's no life. And since there's no life on it, it becomes kind of useless. And the problem he was having was dying. And the best way to solve that is get your defenses up. And life is one of the most important stats in this case. Most minion builds actually suffers from attribute issues with specifically dexterity. And the easiest slots to get dexterity is jewelries. So either your rings or your amulet. And because of bone rings availability and the necessity of soccer starvation through unset rings, having your dexterity covered on the amulet in the super low body versions of builds is super good to cover with. And that's why we find things like, if you do, like again, we did the search earlier, just doing this, searching for dexterity and say, hey, I want 50 plus dex, and I want to have a life mod of like, say, 60 plus as well, and I want to have 40 elemental rest. At this point of the league, it's one chaos. It's essentially free. And they're cheap as well at the early stage of league as well. Because you don't care about offensive stats here. You care about life, fixing your attributes, and then resistances. And that's about it. Anyways, hope you had use of this. Hit the like button, subscribe for more content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Till then, stay safe and keep rocking.